Welcome back to the channel. This is part two of my three-part MCU universe comparison, where I'm comparing the Infinity War to the Multiverse, both the sagas and all the differences. I've done one episode so far. I will link that down in the description box, and this will be episode 2 and then episode 3 to come later in the week. All right, here we go. Thanks for watching. Okay, so next section. If there's, how many of you are left? Maybe 2 or 3 of you in this video. The shared universe aspect. The shared universe aspect of Infinity War was astonishing. It was astonishing. And I don't think most people realize how good a job they did because of how seamless it was done. And I'm gonna go very much into this. So the first element of the shared universe in the Infinity War, there was a framing group. So there was a group in the Infinity War saga. There was always a group that sat in the middle of these single character movies, and then the team up movies revolved around it. So first it was S.H.I.E.L.D., right? In phase 1, S.H.I.E.L.D. was the central group. Cap, all the single movies interfaced with S.H.I.E.L.D. The first Cap movie interfaced with S.H.I.E.L.D. at the end, and it was the genesis of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. The Iron Man movies interfaced with S.H.I.E.L.D. Thor interfaced with S.H.I.E.L.D. And then, the Avengers movies, S.H.I.E.L.D. was really brought out in the Avengers. Then phase 2, after Cap's movie, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s gone. But now the Avengers, they've got a compound, they've got a headquarters. For phase 2, the Avengers take over. They're the central group. Now you can kind of, people can go to Avenger Tower, or, there's Avengers, administrative stuff going on that leaks into the other movies, right? Then in phase 3, it's the compound in upstate New York, but it's the same thing. There's a centralized kind of group which kind of holds the universe together, and the movies can bounce off of it. There's nothing like that in the multiverse. In the movies, I should say, there's the TVA, the Time Variance Authority in the multiverse, but it's only in the TV show. And if you're not watching the films, you're not really getting, and I appreciate that they're trying to do more of this with the films and the TV shows, and I'll get into more of that in another section. But the one thing gluing the multiverse together is the TVA, and it's not in any of the movies, really. You don't know much about it in the films, and as a result, and the Eternals don't interact with it, and it's not the same feel as if the centralized, like you had Nick Fury, Coulson, Maria Hill, that were they moved in and out of other people's movies, and they're like, oh yeah, right, there's a bigger world here beyond whatever. And so you really got that feeling of the shared universe because of these centralized, entities. Let's put it that way. Okay, so second part of this is the interaction between the larger world, right? So characters you've met in single films popping into other single films, then popping into shared universe films. There's so much of this in Infinity War, it boggles the mind. And I'm going to go through movie by movie because, I don't have anything else to do. Plus, the crossover films. There were 5 crossover films in Infinity War. You had Avengers, Ultron, Civil War, Endgame, and I feel like I'm missing one. Infinity War. Also, you had team-up films rounding out phases. Avengers rounded out phase 1. Ultron rounded out phase 2, Endgame rounded out phase 3, brought the whole thing to a close. So far, there's been no team-up movie in the multiverse. None at all. The multi-character films, right, there's going to be Thunderbolts, which will be actually, Thunderbolts will be the first team-up movie because it's going to have people from Cap and Black Widow. And I think a character from the Ant-Man universe as well. That's the first team up, and you're finishing out the second phase of the multiverse saga. That's your first team up film. So again, huge differences, right? And I think to me, often the Avengers team up movies in the Infinity War, things happened at the end of those movies that then reverberated into the second phase or the third phase, like, which also adds to unity, which I'm going to get to. That's a whole other section. All right, so check out the crossovers, all of the blending of the universe that happened in the Infinity Saga, right? In Iron Man, okay, you had Fury in the end credits putting the team together, but Coulson was in most of the movie. Hulk, end credits, we're putting a team together, okay? Iron Man 2, Natasha now in the movie, Fury in the movie, Coulson in the movie. Thor introduces the Space Stone and the Tesseract, and the end credits is teasing Loki in the Avengers film, right? So there's a connectivity there. Thor also has Coulson and also has Hawkeye, right? The first Cap film, the Space Stone / Tesseract. The film ends in SHIELD headquarters. The end credits, Nick Fury, there's a team waiting, blah, 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 blah. Coulson is actually in almost every film, which is amazing. Then, obviously, you have the Avengers. Loki's the main villain. He's from the Thor films. And you get a reveal and tease of Thanos at the end of that film, which is teasing an even larger universe. Phase 2, Iron Man 3, nothing, but in the end credits, you have Banner. So, okay, a little token there. Thor the Dark World, the Ether is the Reality Stone. So we're introducing the things that are going to be the main plot of the last two team-up movies in this whole saga. The Infinity Stones are being dropped into these movies. The Ether is the Reality Stone, and the end credits we see the Reality Stone brought to the Collector. The Collector is going to be, there's going to be Collector in Infinity War. Winter Soldier, right? Shield's in it, Nick Fury's in it, Natasha's in it, Winter Soldier is now in it, who'll be in a lot of the Avengers films. Baron Strucker with Loki's scepter in the end credit, and they're teasing the twins at the end. So you've got Wanda and I forget Quicksilver's name, teasing them who are going to be in Ultron, right? Then Guardians, Ronan's big weapon is the Power Stone, right? Another Infinity Stone, which is left with Nova Corps, who's destroyed. Thanos winds up destroying, I think, their whole planet or something when he goes to get it. We get to Ultron. Loki's staff is another Infinity Stone. It's passed to create Vision, who will be a key point in the end of Infinity War. Thor has this vision of the end of Infinity War. Stark's vision as well. In the end credits, we hear the voice of Thanos teasing, I got to do this myself, teasing it now, more of the stones and more of Endgame. Ant-Man, we have this brief, Falcon shows up when Ant-Man has to go get something. He and Falcon have a brief battle. The end credits tease Wasp, which will be in the next Ant-Man film. Phase 3, Cap Civil War introduces Wakanda, Black Panther, and shows Bucky in Wakanda, teases his new arm. Doctor Strange, post-credit scene, leads directly into Ragnarok. Teases a sequel with evil Baron Mordo, who does show up actually in the next movie, and introduces the Time Stone, which in that Eye of Agamotto, which is going to play a huge part in Infinity War and Endgame. Guardians Volume 2 teases Warlock, who will be, who will come later in Volume 3. Spider-Man Homecoming, Iron Man appears, Stark appears in that film. Ragnarok, Hulk's in most of the film, Banner. The end credits tease the arrival of Thanos. Black Panther, you got Everett Ross from Cap Civil War. Bucky is there, seemingly kind of better, and the new arm is being revealed. Then Infinity War, at the end, Fury turns to dust with his pager teasing Captain Marvel. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Hank, Hope, and Janet vanish, leaving Scott in the quantum realm, teasing setting up Endgame. Captain Marvel, Danvers appears in the post-credit scene. You see her appearing amidst the Avengers looking for Fury from his page in the earlier movie. And then Far From Home, we have Nick Fury, which he's actually, I think, a Skrull at this point. But Tony's tech is at the center of the plot, right? So that's, again, it's leaked over from all of the films that Tony was in. And the end credits tease Secret Invasion. So that's the Infinity Saga. All of these films, they're all bleeding into each other, borrowing from each other. Characters are coming in and out. Obviously, some are only little token end credit scenes. I give you that. But for the most part, the world seems so seamless. It's so in and out of each other so often. It so feels like a shared universe. It really, really works. Now, Multiverse. Whole different story. First of all, I talked about it earlier, there are no team-up films that are crossing over. Thunderbolts will be the first one, then you'll have Doomsday and Secret Wars. There'll only be 3 if they end it with Phase 6. And very minimal characters showing up in anyone else's films. These films really feel like each film is in a whole separate universe, which is another problem I'll talk about later on. So, here are the real crossovers. These are the only things that I've seen. In Multiverse of Madness, you have Wanda, right? She's the antagonist. We've seen her from other movies, so she's in. And it brings us into the multiverse proper, which sets up the Kang Dynasty storyline eventually. But that's it. Wakanda Forever introduces Ironheart, Riri Williams, who's going to be Ironheart in the TV series eventually. We have Everett Ross from Cap Civil War is in also in Wakanda Forever. And there's a brief cameo by Julie Louis-Dreyfus, who winds up showing up in a bunch of multiverse films now that are Cap-oriented, as the Baroness. I can't remember her name, it's so long. Ant-Man and the Wasp, okay, finally now you have Kang. You're finally teasing kind of the Thanos of the multiverse. You see him right there, where now like he's going to be the big antagonist. Cap, New World Order. You're getting the leader from the Incredible Hulk way back in Phase 1, who's the main villain. And I'm, Ross, but Thunderbolt Ross is kind of, Thunderbolt Ross is also a bleed over from the Hulk films to the Cap films. That's it, okay? And then the tease at the end of Cap New World Order is there's something coming from outside. They're teasing, Doomsday. Okay, fine, got it. The Marvels, right? So you got Kamala Khan, but she's from the Ms. Marvel TV series, not another film. Nick Fury is in it, so you got Fury there, and then that's it. Then there's Danvers, which is this a Captain Marvel film? Is it not a Captain Marvel film? Nobody knows what the hell this film was. And then obviously Deadpool and Wolverine, but they're borrowing from the TV show. They're borrowing from the TVA and the idea of variants and timelines. That's all TV stuff. So that's it. For mostly 2 phases of the multiverse, that's the only bleed over. There are some end credit crossovers. So these are little end credit crossovers. Like in Black Widow, the Julia Louis-Dreyfus character turns up at the end to kind of send Yelena off to the Hawkeye TV show, not back into the movies, right? Shang-Chi at the end, Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner are there, examining the 10 rings, like, oh, okay, what are these? So they bleed over, but it's just the end credits. Spider-Man No Way Home, there's a Venom cameo at the end, teasing that maybe the symbiote is going to be in the MCU. We don't know that. Thor Love and Thunder, it's teasing a Hercules villain, so maybe there's going to be a new Hercules Thor film. Okay. And then Guardians 3, no crossover whatsoever. And that's it. I mean, think about the rundown of the Infinity War that I just did, all of the connections and all of the foreshadowings and everything that happened. We're finishing out the second phase of the multiverse, and this is it, which to my mind, again, is part of the problem. Okay, next section. To my mind, the Infinity War saga did so well with consequences from certain films being felt in future films. To me, this is the glue. The crossovers were great. The single character stories that were about them are great. The central entity in a lot of these films, great. But this, to me, is the glue that is kind of unconsciously is the cement in this world that makes the Infinity War feel like such a realized shared universe. So again, this is consequences that continue to play forward in the Infinity War saga. Are you ready? So, Iron Man, right? Let's just say Iron Man reveals Tony Stark as Iron Man to the world, which triggers the attention of Ivan Vanko to jumpstart the Iron Man 2 story. Iron Man 2, the drone suits show up in Iron Man 3 and Ultron, and it's the genesis of War Machine, who becomes an Avenger. Okay? The Incredible Hulk, at this point now, it's kind of BS, but the leader and Ross end up in, Cap Brave New World, big deal. But Ross ends up being a polarizing figure in the later films, okay? Thor sets Loki on the path for revenge for Avengers, right? The first Cap film, Bucky's presumed death turns into the Winter Soldier storyline. The Tesseract resurfaces, which drives a ton of stuff, which is a goal of Loki's in the Avengers, who wants the Tesseract. The Avengers, the aftermath of the Chitauri tech from the Avengers plays into Spider-Man Homecoming. Tony's experiences in space freak him the hell out and drive him to create Ultron in Age of Ultron. The devastation of New York, one of the prompts for the Sokovia Accords. Iron Man 3, Tony building all these drone suits from the insomnia of being in space in the first film. Quits Iron Man at the end of this film, creates the Iron Legion, which will spark the stuff that goes on in Age of Ultron. Right? Thor: The Dark World, they find the Reality Stone, which is given to the Collector. It's the death of Thor's mom, which will play a part in Endgame when he goes back to see her. Winter Soldier, right? Destroys S.H.I.E.L.D. Hydra. Sends Nick Fury into hiding. Introduces the Winter Soldier, who will be pivotal in Civil War. Causes Remlo to hold a grudge against Cap, which will set off Civil War. Guardians, right? Power Stone to Nova Corps, where Thanos will find it. Age of Ultron. Killing of Zemo's family is the catalyst for Civil War. Hulk disappears due to Banner's guilt, which leads to him being on Sakaar in Ragnarok. Vision is created, which will draw Thanos in Infinity War to end the movie. The Nat Banner romance is kindled, which will de-escalate Hulk in Ragnarok. The Vision-Wanda relationship, which will pretty much be her character arc for everything she does after Endgame. After she loses Vision, she kind of goes haywire. Then, Civil War, it kind of breaks up the Avengers. When Infinity War comes around, they're all scattered about, right? Nat being on the run and being a fugitive starts Black Widow. Civil War introduces Black Panther and makes him king, which will start the Black Panther movie. Also sets up Ant-Man and the Wasp. Scott is confined to his house for breaking parole, which is an element of the entire Ant-Man 2 film, where he puts an insect in his place to stay home while he's off doing the whole, film. Spider-Man Homecoming, the main plot is the consequences of the Battle of New York and Chitauri tech, right? So, Ragnarok, consequences. Thor loses his eye and his hammer. The Asgardians move to Earth. So it drives him to need to find a new weapon. And the hammer becomes a plot point in Thor: Love and Thunder. Hulk ends up on the Asgardian ship, which he loses to Thanos, which sets up the opening of Infinity War, where he transports down and lands in the Sanctum. The Black Panther consequences sets up Wakanda for Infinity War as being the big battle place. Okay, Infinity War, consequences of the Infinity War. This sets up the entire universe for Endgame, right? The death of half the universe. And Scott Lang, etc. Sets up Captain Marvel's return as well. Ant-Man and the Wasp, the end credits set up the opening of Endgame with Lang and the seed of the time travel plot and an early tease of the multiverse. Endgame, consequences, Tony Stark dies. Nat dies. Hulk becomes unified, sets up Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Falcon is the new Cap. And Thor 4, you name it. Endgame sets up like the whole multiverse, half of it. And then Far From Home, the consequences of Tony's death fall to Peter, control of the Empire, blah, 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 blah. All consequences. These are all like atoms bouncing from movie to movie, right? Movie to movie to movie. There's a couple of movies that don't have any consequences. Ant-Man is simply an introduction of the character. There's nothing else. Doctor Strange, simply an introduction of the character, although you are getting the introduction of the Time Stone. And Guardians 2, you're being teased Warlock for their third film. Okay. But still, all of those consequences continue to change and complexify this shared universe. And what's great is the subsequent films all make note. And that's why there was so many problems in production with these movies, because sometimes production had to be held up on some films because post hadn't been finished on certain films, and they had to make sure, like, can we do this in this film because of what happened in previous films? Like, they were rigorous about it. And it shows. Like, it shows the universe is amazing, because all of these consequences are like, when they do the Sokovia Accords and they start showing you clips from previous films, that's when I think it first dawned on me how important this was. Where like, and why Civil War to me was such an amazing movie, is because it was such a pivotal point in the universe, but it used what had come before as real history to create this point in the time when things were going to happen a certain way. So then I went back and I saw, oh my God, it's happening everywhere, So now, go to the multiverse. There's almost none of this, okay? I'll narrate where it does exist, okay? Now that we know about Thunderbolts, so the consequences of Black Widow. We're introducing Red Guardian, Yelena, and I forget who the Rachel Weisz character is, but those three characters will then show up in Thunderbolts, I think, and Taskmaster as well. But that's at the end of Phase 5. Like, they're coming way late. This was the first movie of Phase 4. So, okay, there's some consequences there. And what kind of characters they are. Obviously, Guardian has been sprung from jail, and, Yelena and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's real consequences for Thunderbolts and possibly for the next movie going forward. Eternals, the only consequence of Eternals was there's an adamantium celestial in the Indian Ocean, which plays kind of a half-assed plot device in Cap Brave New World, but it's not really a big deal. I mean, it could have been, I don't know, but it is. I give it. It's a plot device, right? The problem with Brave New World is all of the great consequences from the Infinity War were dealt with in the TV show Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is like 10 times better than Cap Brave New World. Cap Brave New World to me is like a wart on the ass of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you haven't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's the best thing in the multiverse era that's been done in my mind. It's so good. And it was so good that it deposited a fully formed Sam Wilson Cap in the multiverse and then had nothing to do with him. In Brave New World, had no idea what to do with him. All the interesting work was done in the TV show. So anyway, I digress. Spider-Man No Way Home. This really is consequences for the Spider-Man movies. His identity is revealed, which sets up the entire No Way Home film. Wakanda Forever really just sets up Ironheart for the most part and nothing else. And obviously reveals Namor, who's going to be in some future films. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Kang Dynasty, which is gone now, obviously. And then the Marvels might be the genesis of Young Avengers, which is being teased that might come in Phase 6, that there'll be a Young Avengers movie. That's it. And those consequences are very isolated things. Like, oh, this may do that, and this may kick to that, and that may generate that. Whereas the Infinity War, it built. Things were building on each other and connecting and building on each other. And there was like a cumulative force that was building up that was making the world so complex. Whereas this is really like a couple of shots across the bow. Like, oh yeah, that's connected there, that's connected there. And there's nothing in between. There's no meat to say, oh yeah, I got a good handle on the multiverse saga. I really know what it's about. It's got teeth. Because they're not doing these things that I think are really important. And just to kind of iron my point in, Shang-Chi, the only connection in Shang-Chi that the 10 Rings is supposedly a beacon for something, right? And it was supposed to be Kang, but Loki season 2 took care of the Kang storyline. It's dead, it's gone, it's resolved. So there's no connection there. Doctor Strange 2 concludes Wanda's story. We think, doesn't set up anything afterwards. Thor Love and Thunder, Thor has a kid now. Okay, there's a consequence there. Will Thor's son show up in the next Avengers movie? Will it matter? We'll see. The broken hammer from Ragnarok that empowers Jane to be the female Thor. I don't know. To me that's just hooey. And Guardians 3, it doesn't come from anything or lead to anything. It's just kind of like, it's a rocket movie in a way. Deadpool and Wolverine, consequences there. You're bringing Wolverine into the MCU, and now you're going to bring the rest of the X-Men in. But it's not because we don't know why the rest of the X-Men are coming into the MCU for Doomsday. So did Deadpool and Wolverine actually have consequences that reverberate anywhere in the universe? I doubt it. And Cap Brave New World doesn't do shit. It does nothing. The leader comes and goes. Cap is still Cap at the end of the movie. You know, nothing monumental happens, and obviously Ross becomes Red Hulk. Is that going to matter going forward? I think that was just a gimmick to try to sell the movie, frankly. So again, this is just like another argument for me of like another thing that the multiverse just doesn't get involved in that's so integral to the Infinity War. This ends part 2 of my comparison between the Marvel Infinity War saga and the Multiverse saga. Part 1, again, as I had said earlier, is available down, link in the description box, and part 3 is coming very soon. Thanks for watching.